We'll go to Daniel 7. And I want to show you, in the process of Daniel 7, how this is not my crazy idea, that this is biblical. That way you can see.
Yeah.
Okay, so the book of Daniel. The book of Daniel has a chiastic structure. Chiastic structure is when they, in Hebrew, when they wrote the Bible, it was poetic. It was chiastic, so there was a rhythm and a structure to it. Okay, and so the book of Daniel, as you know, has two books together into one. And we even know that the first part from 2 verse 6 to 7 is written in Aramaic, and then the rest is written in Hebrew. Right? So there's two books. And what happens is that there's this chiastic structure. So this is Daniel chapter 1. Actually forms the foundation of it, and actually deals with the transference from one kingdom to another kingdom. And that's a different study. But what happens is these chapters are then paired. So chapter 2 is paired with that chapter 7. The image in Daniel 2 that goes through the Babylon, Media, Persia, Greece, Rome is paired with chapter 7, and with the lion, the bear, the leopard, the dragon, right? They're paired together. So they're covering the same material, so they're paired together. And then chapter 3 deals with being thrown in the fiery furnace, and chapter 6 is going to be dealing with thrown in the lion's den. They're paired. They're same thing, right? And then, of course, chapter 4 is dealing with King Nebuchadnezzar and his vision with the tree, and his becoming a beast for 7 years, because he doesn't listen, but he does listen, and he ends with glorifying God. And of course, chapter 5 deals with our King Belshazzar, who thinks life is just a drunken party, he can do whatever he wants, and he doesn't grow. So the paralleling of the two kings. And then, of course, this is chapter 1, right? Now, the other side of the chiastic structure is that you have Daniel 7. This is the historical part, we tend to say, which isn't really accurate, but whatever. And then this is the prophetic part of it, right? So Daniel 7 is paired with chapter 12. They both have the times and half the time. They both deal with the kingship, right? Then you have, of course, Daniel 8 with the beasts, and this is paired with that Daniel chapter 11, Persia. And, you can go through the details of this. Sorry, this both take you down to the time. Okay, here's chapter 9, and this is 9a, dealing with Daniel's prayer specifically, which is very, very powerful and very influential. Daniel's experience here in Daniel 9 with his prayer is reflected in his experience in his vision of Daniel 10 when he actually encounters God. And then the basis of the second part of the chiastic structure deals with the prophecy of the Messiah. Daniel 9, 24 through, 24 through 28. Right, and by the way, it says there that this is that 70 weeks are determined to seal up vision and prophecy. This is the seal of prophecy. This is the foundation of prophecy. That's why it's in the center of the prophetic heart. Does that make sense? So what you see here is that this, and yes, this looks like the tree of life, and yes, there's a river that's going to come down, and you're standing on both sides of the river, yes. But the idea is that Daniel 7 is the connection. Connects both sides to it, so it's one living thing. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
So Daniel 7 becomes pivotal in terms of understanding the book of Daniel. So Daniel 7 is going to become the crux. By the way, when you get to Revelation, most of Revelation, the seals and the trumpets, is based on the pattern that's given in Revelation and Daniel 7, and I'm going to show you that pattern now. So a lot comes from there, and when you read Revelation chapter 1, it immediately starts using Daniel 7 imagery, right? This whole idea of the Son of Man at the right hand of the throne, that's Daniel 7. Actually, it's Psalm 110 and Daniel 7 being combined. So Daniel 7 is critical. When Jesus was asked about what killed Jesus was when he quoted Daniel 7. You shall see the Son of Man standing at the right hand of the Father. They killed him for that, because he's claiming to be the Son of Man in Daniel 7. He's claiming to be the Messiah. So So anyways, this is just some neat information for you. It helps in your study when you're just to understand one, I can study the other. To understand one, I can study the other, and it'll help expand my understanding.
And you said that was Psalms 110?
Psalm 110, yes. By the way, all the reformers, and William Miller himself, they understood where they were in the stream of time because of Daniel 7. They understood Babylon, Media, Persia, Greece, Rome, Papal Rome, right? They understood that. And the reformers understood. By the way, this is why this whole dispensational thing has been conjured up by the Jesuits, because they're trying to distract. They don't want people to know that the Pope is the Antichrist. And by the way, that's what's going on in our world, right? And most of Christianity today has adopted dispensationalist view of prophecy, so they don't see the Pope as the Antichrist. We're one of the few remaining people that, and now there are other individuals out there that see it, but we are the ones still, as a church, well, we were, there's some people in our church that are denying. They think this is an antiquated idea by, the turn of the century farmers who didn't know what they were talking about. And we don't believe that anymore because we're sophisticated, intelligent, Seventh-day Adventists.
They were the head of a worldwide movement, but they didn't know what they were doing.
So there's a growing movement in our church that the papacy is not the Antichrist anymore, and that's just an antiquated idea, and that's actually being taught to some of our young people. But anyway, we'll get off on that. But so the point is, Daniel 7 is a historical understanding, the basis of historicist understanding. This is what William Miller preached. And then this is a statement that Mrs. White gives. She says, the commencement of the chain of truth was given to him, and he was led on to search for link after link until he looked with wonder and admiration upon the Word of God. He saw there a perfect chain of truth. See, and this is what's important, is that William Miller got his understanding from the Bible. And this is what we need to go back to. We need to get our understanding from the Bible. So this is why we're going to Daniel 7. I'm sorry that it's so dark. But this is Daniel 7, verse 2, and it gives the context. He says, in my vision by night, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven strove against the great sea, or strove upon the great sea. So this is the introduction to the vision, and it gives the context. And the context here, it gives you three elements. It gives you night, winds, and sea. And you may have already, Lori may have already covered some of this, but the conceptual foundation of the vision is this night, winds, and sea. Now, individually, that could mean anything. But see, in the Hebrew mind, when you start dealing with night, winds, and sea, Daniel he understands this points directly back to creation. This is a reminder of creation. If you go to Genesis 1, verse 2, it says, the earth is without form and void. Darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. So the idea that night and darkness, the winds, and the word for wind and spirit are the same word in Hebrew. And the waters and the deep and the sea, the three elements in Genesis 1 that God confronts at creation are the same three elements that Daniel sees in his vision that is going to be confronted. So creation, this idea of creation, especially creation from Genesis 1, is going to become the background or the conceptual foundation of the vision, right? Now, he's going to see the four winds of heaven in his vision. And the four winds of heaven are, again, throughout the Bible, the four winds of heaven deal with creation. Sometimes the negative creation is destructive. It's Ezekiel 37, verse 9, when Ezekiel is told to prophesy to the dry bones in the valley.
Yes.
The breath that gives them life comes from the four winds. It's the four winds that gives breath to them and gives them life. So the four winds are the Spirit of God, creating life. Now, there's other places that we see the four winds. In Revelation, the angels are holding back the four winds. And when the four winds let go, what's going to happen? All kinds of destruction. Well, why is it destruction if it's creation? Well, to God's people, creation is positive, but to the wicked, what is creation?
Destruction.
It's negative. Their world's going to fall apart. This world and everything in it is going to be destroyed. again, there has to be death before there's resurrection. So the four winds have this positive and negative connotation depending on the context that you read them in. But the four winds in the Bible deal with this concept of God moving and creation taking place. So again, the vision is telling us that creation is the context here. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm sorry for the. Here, let me see, maybe John. What happens in Daniel 7, 2 and 3 is that there's actually the structure. You can't read that, can you? But
It's winds of.
so you'll notice this chiastic structure in the verse, right? So if I stand there, so this is four. There's four. There's four winds, just like there's four great beasts. These four winds are from heaven. These four great beasts are from the sea. These four winds of heaven strove upon, or upon, and these four great beasts come up from, and then the great sea. So the great sea becomes the symbol of where the creation is going to take place. And this is this showing two sides of the conflict. The four winds of heaven are from heaven, and they're striving upon the great sea to create order. The four great beasts come up from the sea, and they're striving to maintain the chaos and the disorder that they want, which is their realm. Does that make sense? So this verse kind of gives us the structure of what is taking place in the vision. And it's right in Daniel 7, verses 2 and 3. You can see. And this is how, in the Hebrew writing, you can look at and find the essence or the meaning of the verse by looking at the structure of the verse. Does that make sense? Okay. So now I'm going to go quickly through the context here of the beast and show you. So the creatures are in conflict with their creator. Notice they're called the great beast, and it's called the great sea, right? Throughout Daniel, great is attributed to divinity, right? It's not this the great Babylon that I built by my power, by my authority, right? He's claiming to be God. So the great sea resists creation at every point, time and space. That's why the four beasts come up out of the earth, and they're called great beasts. So this is the context. That's the great controversy. This is where the word great controversy comes from. The controversy over who is great, who is God. This is where Mrs. White and the Adventists got this phrase from. It's from Daniel 7. It's from the book of Daniel. The conflict, the controversy over who is great. The great controversy. Right? So the great controversy is the setting for the vision of Daniel 7. So now I'm going to quickly run through the steps, the process that William Miller saw. Everybody with me so far? So I'm doing this with the Bible to show you this comes from this Bible. This is not somebody else's idea. So the first kingdom is the kingdom of lion. This is Babylon, and it follows Daniel 2. And this, I have the date 605 to 539 BC. So this is Babylon. Now we're going to deal with linear thinking because that's where we're at. But I can deal with the conceptual stuff later if you have any questions. But I'm going to start with Genesis 1, which is linear. So here's Babylon, and then the next kingdom is Medo-Persia, 539 BC to 331 BC, with the three ribs in his mouth. Now, every one of these beasts will rise or come up or have dominion. So these, in verse 27 of Daniel 7, the four beasts are four kings. So this is about kingship. He says specifically. So the third beast is Greece, 331 BC to 168 BC. And then the fourth beast is Rome. And I couldn't find any pictures, so I drew my own. This is my own little drawing. Dragon with the 10 horns. They always make them so crazy looking, I can't stand them, so I make my own. But the idea is, so 168 BC to 476 BC. 80. I'm sorry, 80 is the kingdom of Rome, right? Yeah. Okay, so we have the first four parts. We have the lion, the bear, the leopard, the dragon, and then the focus is on the fifth part is the little horn, right? Now, I didn't give you the verses, but I can quickly give them for you if you want. So the Papal Rome rules from 538 to 1798, as we know, right? This is the time of the little horn, the times and a half the time, right? Then after that, in verse 9, specifically verse 9, we're going to see 1844. This is where the judgment is. See, the books are open. Daniel 7, verse 9, right? So you can go through the different you can see the different process. So this brought us from Babylon all the way to the present, right? You're with me? Okay. So this thing said, I have to change the slide, make the wording white. So the slide says, creation in the context of the Great Controversy is a setting for the vision of Daniel 7, right? Okay, so what's wrong with the picture then? Well, here's what's wrong with the picture. Creation has 7 parts. But look at our understanding of the vision. How many parts do we have?
6.
So if creation has 7 parts and creation is the foundation for this vision, then there must be 7 parts of the vision. Well, what would be the 7th part? Well, we don't know. And if I don't want to just create it with my own thinking, so how do I figure it out? Well, here's how the Lord showed me to figure it out. Creation, Genesis 1 is a context of the vision. So the point is there any more information in Genesis 1 that help us to see objectively if there's a pattern? So what the 7th part is. So let's go back to Genesis chapter 1. And in Genesis chapter 1, you go back to Genesis chapter 1 and you deal with the 7 days of creation. Right? So day 1, God creates light. Day 2, he separates the waters, creates the firmament and the waters. Then day 3, he separates the waters again, and then the dry ground appears. Then day 4, he creates the sun, the moon, and the stars. Day 5, he creates the birds and the water and the fish in the air. Day 6, he creates the animals, and he creates man. And then the 7th day is the Sabbath, which is the most important part of creation, as we all know, especially the Seventh-day Adventist. So the point here is there a pattern or a process here that can help us understand? Well, yes. What happens is, as most people already understand, God forms it on one day and then he fills it on the next day. So on day 1, he says, let there be light, but it's day 4, which parallels it, that he creates the sun, the moon, and stars. On day 2, the firmament and the waters, the firmament is the air, by the way, and the waters. So it parallels with day 5 when he creates the birds who fly in the air and the fish who swim in the water. So he forms it and then he fills it. On day 3, the waters and the dry ground. So on the 6th day, he creates the animals and he creates man. He forms it, then he fills it. So what happens is you see this 1, 2, 3 ABC pattern, right? And this is the pattern of Genesis, in Genesis chapter 1. So the question, well, if Daniel 7 is based on the creation story of Genesis chapter 1, then does Daniel 7 have a similar pattern? And if it does have that pattern, then will it show us what the 7th part is, right? So we go back to Daniel 7, and the question is, does the Daniel vision Daniel 7 share the same pattern? Well, then we go to Daniel's vision. Each part of Daniel's vision is introduced by some form of Daniel seeing. The word vision means to see, right? So Daniel, in each part, is introduced by Daniel saying, I saw, or behold, or I looked, right? Depending on your translation. I wish I put this in white. So anyway. So notice, is there a pattern? Well, you notice we don't know what the 7th part is. And we want to keep that off to the side, because if I try to say what it is without proving what it is, then that's subjective. So the text has to tell us what it is. So he says, the first part of the vision is, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, then he introduces the line. That's Daniel 7, verse 2. Now, when he introduces the next part, which is the bear, he says, and behold, and then he introduces the next part, 7, verse 5, the bear. And then when he goes to the third part with the leper, he says, I beheld, and then he presents the leopard.
Okay.
Now he goes to the 4th part, he says, I saw in the visions by night, I saw in the night visions, and behold, that's 7, verse 7, and that's when he presents the 4th part, which is the dragon. Then he says, and behold, that's when he presents the little horn, the 5th part, the 5th part. And then the 6th part, he says, I beheld, and that's when he sees the judgment take place, the court is seated and the books are open. So you can see that he uses this same phrase. Is there a pattern there? Well, yes, it's the same pattern you see in Genesis, right? I saw in my vision by night, parallels, I saw in my vision by night, the first part and the 4th part parallel each other. And then the 2nd part, I beheld, and behold, parallels the 5th part, and behold. And then the 3rd part, I beheld, parallels the 6th part, and I beheld. So you see the same pattern. So the idea is, well, any child could look at that pattern and tell me what phrase you need to look for next to keep the pattern going, and which will show us the seventh part of Daniel.
Seeing or beheld? Or
Well,
saw?
it's
I
going to be
saw-
the
I saw
repetition.
my- yeah.
I saw in the visions
I
by
saw
night.
the
That's
visions
what's
by
going to
night.
that's what's going to fill it. So is there a pattern? Yes. Wrong way. Sorry. So is there a pattern? Yes. It says so this is the seventh part. So these are the points that I'm going to make before we go there. If there is a seventh part, it would come after Daniel 7 verse 9. Okay? It would be the most important part, because seventh part is always the most important part of creation.
Chiastic.
It would bring to completion the 7, Christ's work of salvation, right? Because it's the 7. It's the final climax of and the answer to the great controversy. So this is going to be the most important part. And then it's going to say it would be the next link in the chain of truth, to borrow Miller's. By the way, Miller is what pieced these together with the first 5 and came up with number 6, right? So we're following Miller's reasoning. And the idea is that this 7th would move us from the 6th part to the 7th part. And it makes what will become in the future a present truth. So it can be identified by the phrase, I saw in the night visions and behold. If you find that phrase, you're going to find the 7th part. And if our reasoning makes sense, it will be there. And if I'm wrong, then it's not there. So is it there? And if so, where is it?
13.
Yeah. So here's the final event. We've already dealt with 1844, and that was the 6th. Remember, when the judgment sat. So this is the next event. This is the next Christ event that's going to complete everything. And what is the event? Well, it's in Daniel 7 verses 13 and 14. And what does it say? Well,
We kept watching.
it says, I saw in the visions, night visions, and behold,
In the closet.
one like the Son of Man, right? Came with the clouds of heaven. He came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all the peoples and nations and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom is that which shall not be destroyed.
It's his coronation.
So what is this event? Well, of course, I'm cheating because I'm showing you pictures of him being king while I'm showing you. But I want to show you from the Bible that this is what it is. But the point here is neat is that I'll go back to her statement with Miller. The commencement of the chain of truth was given to him, and he was led on to search for link after link until he looked with wonder and admiration upon the Word of God. See, we have been told to study Daniel.
Yep.
But we think you've been through Daniel Revelation Center. I don't need to go. We think we already know what, but we haven't known. We don't know because we haven't seen clearly. And what happened with the 7th part in the past is that the 7th part, Daniel 7, 13, 14, was linked together with the 6th part to prove that Christ moved from the holy place to the most holy place.
Yeah, but
Because it's showing movement.
But not as it was
Right.
not priests.
Now,
we're talking about king.
what's amazing here, when Mrs. White whenever she quotes this, she never talks about, and she's actually very clear about, that the kingdom was not given to Christ in 1844. She takes the idea of Jesus moving in heaven and saying, see, Jesus moved in 1844, but she never says that this verse was completed in 1844. No, because she's very careful in what she says, which is very interesting. And I've studied it because I know this is it's a critical matter. So the point here is that what is this event? Well, I'm telling you that it's time for the high priest to become king. That's what this event
It's
is telling
saying
you.
it.
This is a transition. And by the way, this is biblical from Daniel 7.
Yeah.
And now, what I need to do is take you to a little study of Daniel 7, 13, and 14. And I'll do that. Any questions?
So what you're saying is that in the past, we have linked 9 and 13 and 14 together as one
event. That's right. That's right. Because the same thing that our forefathers did, they thought Jesus was coming. So they didn't think there was a process at the end. They thought it was all happening. So we did the same thing in Daniel 2. We linked the end parts of it together into one event. So if you listen to most evidence, they'll tell you that the stone hitting the rock and hitting the statue on the feet is the second coming of Christ.
Right.
Sure.
Well, okay, because that's what Uriah Smith said.
Mm-hmm.
Show me that from the Bible. And the truth is that what you do is, and I can do a study in Daniel 2, but when you parallel Daniel 2 and Daniel 7, what you find is if they're parallel, then the fifth part, which is the stone cut out of the mountain, has to parallel the fifth part of Daniel 7. The sixth part, I'm sorry. Are you with me? So there's the gold, the silver, the brass, the iron and clay, the first 5 parts. The first 5 are earthly parts, just like in Daniel 7, the first 5 parts. Babylon, Media, Persia, Greece, Rome, Paper, Rome are earthly parts. The last 2 parts are heavenly parts. So the 6th part in Daniel 7 is the judgment. The 6th part in Daniel 2 is the stone cut out of the mountain. The stone cut out of the mountain has to be the judgment. By the way, the stone imagery in the Bible is always connected to judgment.
Makes sense. Yep.
So it's not the second coming.
The destruction of the
Stand
image.
on the rock or be crushed by the rock.
Right, and this is what Jesus said, right? The stone of stumbling, the rock of offense, right?